Okay. Good evening, everybody. It's good to have you all here because it's an important meeting in that we need to discuss the diaspora being present in all our meetings about the uniting of Africa as one continent. And it seems to be something that is um, we know needs to be done, but is unspoken. So we're going to have a discussion today and possibly in 2 weeks' time, continue it about why it is important that the diaspora are present at the table. So we have two speakers for us tonight. We have Brother Coco and Brother Glenroy. I will ask Brother Glenroy to start first. Um, um, and then I'll hand over to Brother Coco. We hope to have our presentations within the first hour and questions and answers during the second half. Um, so, Brother Glenroy, if you're ready, maybe you can tell us why it's so important that the guests are at the table at every meeting, please. Thank you. Brother Glenroy, did everybody manage to hear me?
Yeah,
Yes,
I heard you.
yes, we heard you.
I'm just dealing with something here domestically. Okay, not a prepared presentation by any means. It will simply be concerns that I think others have had also. And I'll try to list them. There are 4 specific issues that I think are matters we need to discuss. And these are by no means in any chronological order, historical order, or anything of that nature. It was said that we need to be at the table. So the first issue that I would like to raise is, why is it that people think that we're not at the table? Now, in all the struggles that have gone on, and I'm not comfortable in separating Africans that were left on the continent and Africans that were stolen from the continent. I like to speak that we're all Africans. If people want to give it dimensional location, identity, then yes, we are from East Africa, North Africa. African nations outside of the continent, or indeed those people who do not yet identify themselves as Africans. But we know that they are Africans. We can wait, we can give them the chance to self-discover or whatever it is. I noticed, for example, a number of videos coming out of the US, or perhaps not in the US, but people who seem to want to create a division between Africans, or Black people as they call them in the US, and Africans. I don't resonate with that. I don't understand that. We are Africans, some living in North America, some living in Europe, and all over the globe outside of the continent. That does not in any way change our being African. So that's the first thing I want to address is the terminology. Part of our effort must be to say to fellow Africans that we are one and we identify as one, whilst at the same time recognizing that there will be some who will never want to be called Africans or accept that as their identity. It doesn't mean we ignore them. Doesn't mean that we don't believe that they have a role to play in our relationship with Africans on the continent and Africans off the continent. It means simply we have to recognize that there are people who will not move at the same rate as we are. I'm sorry, Comrade Super, if messages have been put in the chat and I don't read these while I'm trying to do this. So hopefully if whatever you put there, you'll remark later on about it so that we can follow you. So identity for me is one of the first pillar of engagement with Africans all over the globe, regardless of the diaspora, regardless of the continent. Because we need to really also recognize, I'll return to this in a little while later, we need to recognize how dysfunctioning is the only word I can think of for it, but I don't really want to use that. But our Africans, for example, in the northern hemisphere of our continent, are dislodged from the rest of the continent, the rest of the African community. And people will say, of course, all the people in North Africa are Africans because they're on the continent. I beg to differ. I think that Egypt, Tunisia, and those countries have been conquered or invaded. And people need to remember that there are Africans still living in Egypt. And all of these countries, they haven't disappeared. The effort to defeat them, and perhaps somebody will say annihilate them, create a genocide in the north, has not wiped out our people. They're still there on the edges of society, but they're still there. So I wonder, when we speak of the diaspora, do we include Africans in the northern countries? And then obviously Africans in places like so-called Arabia or the Middle East, as some people like to call it. Are they then part of the diaspora? Of course they are. But we need to address what is the position and what is the designation we give to Africans in places in the northern area of the continent. So the second issue I want, and I assume, Chair, I have 20 minutes, so I'm trying to ensure I use that.
By all means.
Okay, your audio is very distorted. I hope mine is a little bit better. The second issue that I think we ought to be discussing, and I take this to be that we want to discuss concerns that Africans have or wherever in the world they are. And the second thing, therefore, that I want to address is repatriation. Among the Rastafarian community, it is a key element of our campaign, repatriation, the right to return to the continent. And I think it's right also to modernize that, modify it to reflect that reparation isn't just about a physical return to the continent. It should include connection to the continent. You know, I have ceased for many, many years looking for holiday anywhere off the continent. And I'm sure there are people still going to the south of France, Los Angeles, Disneyland, whatever. I've ceased to do that. My connection must be on the continent. We have many, many places for holidays, beaches, etc., etc. Now that I'm living on the continent, I would also ensure that my holiday is such. I'm having to visit Europe at the moment to see my children, and I've just visited the Caribbean to see my mother. So repatriation does not mean disconnecting to connections that you've made and needed to. But for me to pick up myself and plan and say that I'm going to go to a European city, whatever time of year it is, for a holiday, I hope I never have to discuss such a thing. So part of the engagement from those who are not on the continent and wish to do so should also include repatriation of interests, of finance, or even simply making contact with your family members on the continent. I consider that part of repatriation, but of course the key part of repatriation is actually physical repatriation, and more people should be doing that. We've talked about it for too long. The third issue that I want to raise is the other side of that issue of repatriation, is the participation of African nations and African NGOs to make repatriation a reality. I was in Ghana one year, and their right of return process was placed in the tourism sector. In other words, the people who are responsible for making sure that you can get your visa and get your accommodation and whatever else it is that a tourist industry does is responsible for Africans who have been stolen to make their way back to their home. I felt that was extremely insulting. I don't know if that's changed. I certainly protested when I was there to the minister that was responsible for it. This is some years ago. But it seems to them to be appropriate to put our return, Africans stolen, and find themselves out of the continent in the hands of people who presumably were encouraging Europeans to visit Ghana, to visit various sites in Ghana. The two things to me were incompatible, and it's something that require address. And indeed, I believe it's something that all of the nations on the continent should be setting up specific bureaus, ministry, for the return of Africans. And I should say at this point that Africans returning should not be linked, as some people have linked, to where your ancestors were stolen from. And it really is always struck me as very ridiculous that Europeans have come and drawn borders and say wherever our people are, sometimes drawing borders through our own homes, our own community, and tell one people you're Kenyan and the other you're Tanzanian. And we have maintained that situation. So how is it that we are expected to engage in a process? Hold on a second. Guys, could you give me a bit of a break? Hello? Yeah, could I have a break? I'm just doing this presentation. So on the issue of identity for our return, people might want to do it for all kinds of reasons. They like to say, you know, I'm from here, my ancestors from here, and so on. But again, as I started, I'm an African. I'm not an African from East Africa. I'm not an African from West Africa, South Africa. I'm simply an African. And that's the approach that we have to take. these boundaries and borders didn't exist. And when people do DNA tests, it might please some, but the reality is that unless you recognize that your ancestors were not in these boundaries and borders, that they were traveling the continent, and therefore their DNA will not represent this group or that group, will not represent this geographical area or that geographical area. This is the discovery, Idris Elba, I think I pronounced his name correctly, the actor, had to discover. Because his mother had always told him that he's from Ghana, his community is in that region, and then when he had his DNA test, it was discovered that he was part of the Bantu community, et cetera, et cetera. There's a video out. I suggest people watch that. Because along with the reality that we did not sit in some corner waiting to be segregated by the Berlin Conference, we traveled. But not only did we travel, when they stole us, they did not steal us and say only this community should be living together and only that community. They didn't care. They threw everybody together, and therefore many of our lineage is mixed. And I don't care. I'm an African, whether I'm geographically here or my DNA says this or says that. I don't care. I'm an African. And that is the only designation that I am concerned about. And I hope I look like an African and will be accepted as being an African. The other points that I would like to use my time to put on the table is the boundaries and borders. Somebody, I hope, on here can tell me about a serious politician on the continent, good or bad, who has made some effort to get rid of the boundaries and border. People are talking about visa-less travel, that you won't need a visa to go from one country. And how long have we heard about the African passport? So one of the requirements, and this might be seen not in line with the issue about diaspora, but I think it is. I think the fact that we continue to have European boundaries and borders mean that diasporans are being invited, if we can say that, into a situation whereby we have not yet addressed the issue of unification. So what is the likelihood of unifying with people who have been forced disengaging from the African community? The other item I want to touch on, because according to my clock, I've got only 5 minutes left. The other thing I want to touch on is something that I'm glad Sipaway is here, that perhaps his contribution can address this, is what seems to me a fleeting promise of a 6 regions participation. If we are talking here about sitting at the table, which is a concept that I difficult to really get my head around. If we are talking that we can find a way to be part of the structure of the African Union and African people is through a process of election whereby representation can be elected. I have never been convinced that the African Union are serious about this. And therefore, Africans outside of the continent need to address this with the participation of the African Union or without it. We should be bold enough to say, these are our representatives, and you should recognize them. The final thing I want to address is something that people have avoided. At our meeting last night, we had a GAC international meeting last night, and we are reminded that the current campaign being conducted by most reparation organizations is addressing this issue of European participation, and that's important, it's very important. The places that I find myself at the moment in the UK was a leading thief, a leading robber, a leading murderer in the process of enslavement. So they must be on the agenda and kept on the agenda until satisfaction is received around the issue of reparation. That's what it means to deal with a crime against humanity, which is what enslavement was. However, we also have to put on the agenda Arab enslavement, which is still going on in the north of our continent. We must address that. That has to be on the agenda if Africans are all going to come together in a meaningful manner. And therefore, part of that must be the role of Africans and their descendants on the continent. Do we know who they are? Do we know who their families are? Do we know what recompense they've made? The statement on our logo says, repair the damage. And Africans outside of the continent who are returning to the continent should not be asked to do so without knowing who they will be returning to. Africans did not get wealthy on African enslavement the way the West did. But I believe individual families, individual people on the continent and their descendants have benefited from enslavement. And we need to address that if we are to come together. And I would say that one of our tasks, I'll wind up with this, Chair, one of our tasks, if we are serious about addressing all the ills that need addressing, is that we do what the Europeans have done. You know, if people are not aware of this, I forgot the university, but I think it might be, anyway, regardless, European institutions have looked into the names, as they say, and again, I treat these things with a level of skepticism. They have identified certain families who have inherited and benefited from enslavement. And we need that done also in the Arab community and their enslavement of our ancestors and the continued enslavement of our ancestors. And also we need to do it for families on the continent who have benefited from enslavement, however small, because we know they would have been agents of the more prosperous enslavers. Nonetheless, I think as a form of addressing the relationship between Africans outside of the continent and those on the continent, this should be an issue that we should put on the agenda. Chair, I think that's my time, and I yield to our next presenter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Brother Glenroy. And I thank you about the DNA issue that you mentioned, because I also think that when people come from one part of Africa and go to another part of Africa, you know, they're Africans, but yet they might be still rejected. But, you know, their DNA, they're Africans. And maybe some of them might feel that they're being treated like they're not part of the continent as well, even though that is not the issue. Our issue today is the diaspora. So I thank you for your presentation. You've given us lots to discuss later. And I will pass on to Brother Coco. Are you ready? Can we get you to make your presentation now, please? Oh, thank you.
Okay. Do you hear me?
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I have not been able to prepare a presentation. Hence, I will, similar to my elder brother, Glenroy, try to summarize my points in a way of submission as he did. And what I will try to do is maybe just emphasize on what he has done or cover the points that he hasn't covered. Because I agree with him wholeheartedly with everything that he has said. So let's start with first things first. The Africans are at war. The Africans have been at war since the 14th century or 15th century, since the papal bulls were issued. We need to start from that position. We need to realize that Africa has been at war. By saying Africa has been at war, then we realize that our brothers who have been forcefully taken away are prisoners of war. They haven't gone there voluntarily. All right? Then at that juncture, allow me to distinguish between those who haven't been taken there, who haven't gone there voluntarily, and some of us who have gone there voluntarily recently. So the AU, in its effort to sort away questions on what are you going to do about the diaspora, they have come up with the sixth region as an excuse to make sure people stop asking those questions. Because the issue of a sixth region has been raised, but you haven't seen anything on the ground to show how that is going to be implemented. To me, I think that was just an excuse. An excuse so the status quo continues. By the status quo, we have fiefdoms. We have states which were born around Berlin Conference. And when they were born around Berlin Conference, it means they were European constructs. They are not African constructs. But we have, by all means, tried everything to defend those European constructs. Why? Because the people who took over, majority of them were European, educated, European, brainwashed, doing everything in the European way of doing things. And the Europeans invaded Africa and took African land, African everything, African sovereignty from the African chiefs. The African chiefs have not been involved in this process of decolonization. As far as I'm concerned, decolonization isn't complete. Decolonization is incomplete. I'm not just talking about decolonization from the European masters who had colonized Africa. We're talking about those who came in as the European masters were giving away power. The CIA came in, and we know what the CIA did in Congo. We know what the CIA did in Accra, in Ghana, by toppling Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. We know how the CIA helped in apprehending Nelson Mandela and sending him to prison. So as far as I'm concerned, we are still at war as Africans. They are still waging war on us. And now, the way that they are waging war on Africans is they are using Africa as a big open prison in which Africans, after they qualify, they graduate from high school, they don't have jobs, they don't have anything, because everything is modeled on the European way of doing things. We continue to supply the raw materials to Europe. Hence, we do not produce sustainable jobs on the continent for the African youth. Hence, the African youth are crossing the Sahara on foot. Mark my words, they are crossing the Sahara to look for better opportunities across the Mediterranean in Europe, where they've been told that their resources have been taken. Some are going to the Middle East, where we know enslavement is happening as we speak. They are living in deplorable conditions. But all of this are happening while the African puppets, the African misleaders, continue to rule over the Africans. And when we raise this, we are told, form a party, join democracy, you will get to change. You'll get the change. Democracy is not the African system. The democracy that they have now is a make-believe. It's a system of domination in which those who have the power of incumbency, who have the resources of the government, can do anything they want and continue to rule as fiefdoms in the land of our forefathers. So, about the diaspora. I came here to London about more than 20 years ago. I don't know what brought me to London now as I think, but it's something that opened my eyes. Because coming here, I realized the hierarchies in the society. I sort of understood how the world works the minute I came here. Because if I had stayed in Southern Africa where I lived, I would have probably continued with the capitalist way of doing things. The daily cringe, or whatever you call it, where you want to continue with the system that you are told that it works. But coming here opened my eyes to see that the African is at the bottom of the pile. The African does not sit at the table. The African at the dinner table is the food. He's not a guest, but he's the dinner. That is the problem. And the current system will continue just so those who are benefiting on the Africans' resources can continue to do that. And our brothers and sisters who were forcefully removed from Africa are unfortunately now part of that system. Some of them know of what is happening. Some of them don't know. And some of them don't even care. But those that want those that care, that want to come back to Africa, they have to be given a safe passage. They have to be returned into the communities where they were taken from or wherever they want to go. But unfortunately, the African Union states that all African countries, they are at liberty to deal with their own diasporans the way that they want to do. So what they are doing here is we have another softer middle. We have the AU, which we don't know who funds it. And that AU, which we don't know who funds it, is being undermined by the African states, these European constructs. They continue to do as they want, and now they are allowed to treat the diaspora question anyhow that they want. Some of them, like Rwanda and Nigeria, they do have a comprehensive diaspora policy, but that diaspora policy is for those people who have left the African continent voluntarily. There is nothing for those who left the African continent in chains. So this is my submission here, that the Africans who left the African continent in chains, voluntarily, they have to be reinstated into the African continent, into the African society, to their rightful place, because it's the right thing to do. I'm not only talking about economics here, I'm talking about the right thing to do. When they were taken, we were weakened. We were weakened. That's why it was easy for the Africans to then be invaded and colonized, because our brightest, our strongest were taken away. It's time now to do what is right. To right the wrongs that were done with some involvement of our forefathers. And even though I come from Southern Africa, I don't know how much our forefathers were involved in the slave trade. I feel it's incumbent upon me to apologize to all those who were taken involuntarily away, all those that we couldn't stop being taken into slavery, being taken into captivity. The Africans have to play their part to right the wrongs that was done in their names. But I know we're going to ask lots of questions. We have our own issues as Africans. There is xenophobia as we speak. People are fighting over those European constructs that are there. We are looking at our brothers from certain countries and saying they are coming here, they are coming to destroy our property, they are coming to free ride, free load, whatever you call it. We have forgotten our own system of Ubuntu. It's part of the deal. It's part of the system. The system is there to erode the way we used to do things and replace it with the European ways of doing things, and put capitalism at the forefront, put money at the forefront. That's why our brothers who are returning now, they struggle to even get the land, get the foothold, and they are treated as if they are any other foreigner. Our brothers and sisters who are returning to the continent from captivity have to have a first say. They have to have a first say. They have to have land allocated for them. They have to have resources put up by the Africans to make sure they come back in. If the Africans cannot afford to do that, then this is where the Africans have to go back to the colonizers and request the reparations, and those reparations have to be used to resettle our brothers and sisters who were taken into captivity. Is that too difficult to ask? It might not be difficult, but there are people who are benefiting from the current status quo. Returning those brothers brothers and sisters who were taken into captivity, for some people, it will expose them. It will undermine their newfound system of fiefdoms that they have created. It will stop the lunacy of electing a 92-year-old to rule over a country full of youths. We need to grow our minds back. We need to decolonize as Africans. And that is where the problem is. We don't want to face the truth. There are some things which we are so fond of, which we were given by the colonizer. We will fight tooth and nail to keep them. The system of capitalism, the religions, the foreign religions that we are stuck with, and the system of governance that we are stuck with. And it's not just us we are enforcing that. There are some dark hands who continue to enforce those systems. I've read about how Alassane Ouattara in Ivory Coast is being helped by the Israel Mossad or whoever to, to help the security forces to keep the dissenting masses in check. So some people are still continuing and doing everything in their mind to stay in power, regardless of who is suffering. They don't care. They don't care. That's an African. That's not Ubuntu at all. At all. We are reading CSG, Kwame Nkrumah, where he's talking about philosophical conscientism. Philosophical conscientism is to fuse all of those European, Eurocentric or Euro-Christian cultures, Islamic cultures, with the African traditional cultures. Forget about religions, forget about all of that stuff. Try to bring together different faces of the African way of doing things and develop Africa. Recognize that Africans, we are different. It's going to be difficult when we are faced with religions that are largely dominatory in nature. They have to dominate. They have to dominate. And who suffers? When two elephants fight, it's always the grass that suffers. It's the grass that suffers. And at this moment, the grass that suffers in this case are the Africans at the grass level, and then our brothers in the diaspora. I am here as one of those who was born in the continent of Africa, and I am going to tell you that my brothers and sisters who live here, they live in misery. If you thought your life was miserable there in Africa, you don't know anything. You don't know anything. It's horrible for the Africans who live in the diaspora. Because number one, the culture has been decimated. Their identity has been decimated. They have been told you are not good enough. And then after being told all of those things, they are not even accepted in the society that they live in. So you come here, you start to remember that you are black. But when you are in Africa, you grow your wings. You remember who you are. Here, we have to fight. We have to fight as Africans. And for us to fight effectively, we have to fight together. And it's time for you there in the continent to stand up and say to your misleaders, it's time you give back power to its rightful people. Give power to the people. The power belongs to the people. And the people are there in the continent as well as those people here in the diaspora. The African has to be respected. The only way the African has to be respected is if Africa unites. I thank you all.
Brother Coco, thank you very much for that. And thank you for all that you've said this evening. Let's go to the floor and ask if anybody wants to first contribute anything. Question, or a contribution. I see Brother Stripaway he's been writing in the comments, so it's good to see that your hand is up. Oh, Brother Bernie. Okay. So we'll start with Brother Stripaway and then we'll go on to Brother Bernie. And then anyone else who would like to make a contribution. Thank you.
In Sumna, greetings everyone. Yeah, I do my writing in the chat because as I'm listening, I get provoked with my thoughts. And so my methodology is to, when I have the thought, release them. Not only for my own benefit, but for others who later on can reference them. So because this was raised as an issue, let me address this issue that was raised by Glenroy and his inability to wrap his head around simple reparations and justice as it relates to lineage and DNA. And it's very easy to do this. I'd like all of us right now to imagine a 9-year-old girl from the Bisa people living in her village. And one day, jihadists from the JNIM capture her, traffic her to northern Nigeria, where she's sold to Boko Haram, and then taken to Chad and is employed in sex trafficking. Now, we all understand that justice in this case would begin with returning that Bisa 9-year-old girl to her Bisa village. If we were to apply Glenroy's illogic, a misapplied form of Pan-Africanism, we would say, oh, there's no need for you to return to your Bisa village because you're African and you're still in Africa. And as long as you are willy-nilly anywhere in Africa, that's all that matters. No, we all understand that reparations and justice in that case is that Bisa trafficked young girl needs to return to her lineage, her family, where she was taken from. Today, Glenroy and others, particularly, for example, the CARICOM Reparations Commission, are making the mistake and thinking that reparations are primarily concerned with those of us living today. That is not a fundamental African way of thinking. The African way of thinking is that the past, present, and future are one. The ancestors, those of us living today, and the unborn, we are one. The grand concept of Ubuntu. The first harm, the first repair, reparations, right? The first consideration is to the first harm. We are not returning back to the continent because today, as an individual, myself, Sipiwe Baleka, or Glenroy, personally wants to be on the African continent somewhere. That is a very non-African way of looking at it. We are returning because we have a duty to those who were first harmed, who were born in a specific family, in a specific territory, and received specific birthrights, not African birthrights. In my case, Balanta birthrights, which are different from Iwondu, which are different from Bamileke, which are different from Akan. There are the first victims in this reparations that we're talking about are those who actually survived the trafficking across the Atlantic. They received their birthrights in their village, but they died in captivity and never got their spiritual burial rights. And when we begin to understand Ubuntu and traditional African spirituality, those of us living today, we have the burden and the responsibility to provide internal reparations to that ancestor. We have an obligation to go back to where they were taken from so that their spirit can be put to rest. It is only after that that we who come much later are then relieved of the duty and are free to travel around Africa willy-nilly wherever we want to. Now, retired International Court of Justice Judge Patrick Robinson from Jamaica recently discussed this and criticized the CARICOM Reparations Commission and those who are using this kind of thinking that Glenroy was presenting that skips over the Africans, right, for lack of a better term now, those of our ancestors who were taken and suffered the first harm. If you skip over them and you start thinking about reparations to yourself as a descendant of those people and making it fit your paradigm now, then you are missing the entire boat about Ma'at and justice. This is why DNA testing is a requirement for reparations. You have to be able to identify, right, who your duty is to first. Once you discharge that duty, then yeah, we are free to travel around Africa willy-nilly wherever we want to. But how can we expect non-African people and Europeans, right, to respect justice and pay reparations if we don't first do our duty to our very own ancestors that were the first to suffer? So I will land there. I didn't get into some of the other issues that were raised, but I think that's the one that I think we can all understand right now. Those people that were taken, they didn't know themselves as Africans. They knew themselves according to the families they were born into. I yield.
Brother Sipaway, I think you're introducing another concept which I've never really heard before.
Yes.
In that, yes, Brother Glenroy, I will let you come back on this, but I think it's a different concept to the fact that
I don't agree, and I think I can address it. I hope I give it justice. The extraordinary thing about this, Comrade Sibue, is your foundation is based in largely using the Berlin Conference designated areas.
No, we're not.
Let
me stop you right that before you go any further.
Interrupt you. So, Comrade, I didn't interrupt you. I didn't interrupt you.
You're fundamentally mischaracterizing
I did
what
not
I said.
interrupt you. Did not interrupt you. So much of what you said is disagreeable to me, but I did not interrupt you. Can you please wait and let me speak?
No, because...
Can you wait and let me speak for the simple discipline that I didn't interrupt you?
But what you're saying is pure nonsense.
Could I
has nothing
finish
to
what
do
I'm
with
saying
what
instead of you trying to tell me what I'm saying?
Don't,
You wrote in the chat.
Don't attribute it to me. Don't attribute any of that Berlin Conference thing to me. It is not about that, and I said nothing about that. I'm talking about people, Bisa. I'm not talking about countries. I'm talking about people. Apparently, you didn't understand that. So before you
Okay.
take another 5 or 10 minutes,
How is it you've decided what I understand before I'm able to speak? I mean, this is extraordinary behavior, Elder. Come on, do better. You wrote in the chat about someone if they were born in Angola. You then went on to talk about northern Nigeria, etc., etc. Right? These are Berlin Conference designates. So let's be very clear about that. You may not want to admit it or your finger slipped when you were typing, but that's what's written in that section. So let me move that away from that, because that to me is a flawed start. Now, of course, what you say about somebody in today's timeline, today's issue being stolen, kidnapped, and trafficking, there is a reality that such reconnection can be made. In the case of Africans who were stolen, forced integration, forced sexual relationship, producing generation after generation of different lineage. Are you seriously telling me that we should go to the European structure now and say, please check my DNA, because I don't think my ancestors moved from any part of Africa, and I don't think when they were stolen from Africa, they intermarried with anybody else, and therefore whatever lineage you find for us, that is what I will go back and reconnect with. This is a problem I have with what you said. Wonderful
brothers,
idea.
brothers, I'm going to move on to Brother Bernie. You can both come back later.
Can I just finish on one thing, Chair? Our return to the continent is about all of our people who were stolen, not seeking to identify this lineage or that lineage, because before we were stolen, we traveled the continent. While we were stolen, we mixed with people of other lineage. So the idea of somehow through European science, white European science, we can now identify one lineage is a little bit fanciful, comrade. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Glenroy. Thank you, Brother Sipaway. We'll come back. Brother Bernie, please. Let's hear what...
I don't have any lengthy thing to say. Well, as I listen to them, both are right in their own way, and I hope they can see it in that dimension. What I want to say is that it is comfortable for we in Africa to accept a white person to be president here on this continent over a country. But if we have a brother from any of these Caribbean countries coming here, living here, and wanting to be a president, you would think it will be easy for us to accept that. I think I leave this to all of us. So it shows the existing kind of mentality we have about ourselves, and why even in some of the countries, they will prefer to actually validate a white person more than an African. They will prefer to validate an Asian born here more than an African who comes from who are just divided by borders. Yeah. Thank you, Mama Dai.
Brother Bernie. Sister Grace, let me bring you in quickly. Thank you.
Good evening, all. Yeah, a lot of issues have been highlighted. I have a whole list, but I'll just comment on a few. I wasn't here on Thursday, so I don't know whether this is a progression from whatever was discussed on Thursday. I don't know if this is part of the discussion for the African Union proposal. Yeah.
Yeah, so Sachizobo, on Thursday we discuss philosophy and ideology. We don't discuss issues.
African Union.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I I don't know if today's discussion is linked with the Africa Union, Brother Kwame.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so Chair, just to clarify, today's discussion is part of the ongoing discussion to do with the unification of Africa.
Okay, thank you.
You recall, Sister Chizoba, when you chaired last week, Brother Adrianus' presentation is what I shared, which his book, which called for the unification of Africa, by which he meant the territories. Our position in CSG, which is why we from the UNA, so that we can release a signed document, is that we must unify Africa on the basis of the nations. And so what we've heard so far between Brother Glenroy and Brother Sipiwe, I've kept quiet because I want to hear what others have to say more before I come in. But what Brother Sipiwe has said links with the nationalities as they are in terms of identity. And what Brother Glenroy has said links with Africans in terms of those in the diaspora generally. So that's why Brother Benny said they are both right. But we will come to that later. That is just for clarification. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, so so my question to that was because of the table thing, that they need to be at the table. And then Brother Glenroy said something about the table, and then the rest of the discussions carried on. So I'm assuming we're talking about the table to discuss the Africa Union, the union. Anyway, and then my other comment is on the slavery, especially slavery in the North. That happened then. What happened then, I cannot comment much because it's not usually discussed, so I haven't got much information on that, although I know that it happened, especially in my region in the East and the South. And our people were dispersed to the East. But I am going to comment on today's slavery, which also came up, that's happening today in the Arab states.
Please, Mr. Zoma, a lot of people get very upset when they hear that word. Can we use enslavement? Because even today, it's about enslavement rather than...
Sorry, which word am I using?
Slavery. Can we use enslavement? Because people are being enslaved, and in the past they were enslaved. It's a European terminology, slavery. So could we just use enslavement, please, if possible? Thank you.
Okay, so I'll comment on today's enslavement.
No, sorry.
So
can I clarify? Brother Gloria is here, you can clarify if I'm wrong. What they are saying is that they are not slaves. You can't pick any human being, examine them biologically, and say this is a slave. Biologically, nothing such as a slave exists. It's a social construct. However, the process for what happened institutionally is enslavement. So what they are saying is that call them the enslaved and that not slaves. That is a clarification. So I hope that is clear. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to comment on what's happening today, and hope I get the terminology right. But anyway, what's happening today is there's an assumption, or maybe it is one way of how it's happening, that because people want to come to the West and they go through the North, and they end up in places like Libya and all those things happening. They're having to pay all this money. I think we need to discuss more on how these people are recruited, and also how who is doing it and who is taking part in it, just like the previous enslavement happened to the West. Who is involved and how is it happening? And so although there are traffickers, people who go around recruiting people or kidnapping them or whatever other ways, we need to be aware how this is happening. Because one of the ways that it's happening that's more that I'm concerned about, and I've kind of advocated against it, is a government-to-government arrangement. It's not just people up and saying, oh, I need to go to the West, therefore I need to pay this one money and I need to pay that one money. And who are these people? How do they identify these people? Where do they find them? It's because somebody or a government is introducing these agents. How do they know these agents? Do the politicians have a personal arrangement with those agents and then turn around and say it's a government-to-government arrangement? So governments are involved in shipping these people, in moving around these people. You heard about Malawi sending people to Israel. And then there were some agents involved. So you hear that it's a government-to-government arrangement, and suddenly some people appear with different arrangements. And then these people end up elsewhere. When they get there, it's not what they told when they left. They're being sent to the Arab countries. You hear a whole president saying, oh, if I win the government, this was now during the election campaigns, if I win the government, I would arrange for all these young people to go to the Arab states. I've already spoken to a few with it. They are waiting right now. Can you not work at the airport pushing trolleys? Can you not work in people's homes cleaning? So that's how it starts. And then when these people get there, it's something completely different. If you're lucky, you might end up with a job, but before you know it, you're in the sex trade. You are in all sorts of things happening to you. People who've escaped have told us what's been happening to them. I used to run an organization where people would call us once they get there. It's not what they were told they were doing. It's something else that's going on. We've seen so many videos about people being put on websites, being sold. This one is from Malawi, this one is from wherever, and people buying them. They're being passed on from family to family. So we need to understand how this is happening. It happened then, and it's still happening now. And then there are those that we talk about who willingly came, especially to the West. And then when you get here, you find that the situation is not as you thought, but you still don't leave. You still go through it, thinking things will change, things will improve. And now we are seeing all these Western governments every day in the news. It's about migrant workers. Changing laws, flipping them up and down, sideways. People don't know whether they're going to be here tomorrow or not. And the jobs now, people, because that's in the domain, the employers are also behaving badly. So, and like I said, there's even a book I saw in Foils the other day, Willing Slaves, that we know what's happening, but we stay on. We stay on. We carry on as if nothing is happening. Like Brother Coco said, it's not as good as it looks. So there's so many things happening. And then when you want to return, then it's another problem. We're talking about the forced migrants who came then having problems going back. But then the current migrants, when they want to go back, the countries are not receiving us well. When you get there, to them, you're just a foreigner. And they treat you badly. You can't participate as everyone else.
Brother, sister.
Hello.
Sister Grace, I thank you for what you've been telling us. And can I move to Brother Pigeon? Who said,
okay, thank you.
Yes, you can come back a bit later, please.
All right.
But Brother Pigeon says that he has to catch a transport, and could he talk? And then I'll move on to Pro Book. So, and then I'll come back to you, Brother Shipaway. I see your hand up. Brother Pigeon, would you like to go next? Thank you.
Yeah, greetings. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
I don't know if I'll be speaking to the topic or the topic change, because I'm hearing about immigrants and they works out. Am I okay to contribute on the United Nations? Is that what we should contribute?
Chair, can I come in there? Brother Pigeon, you are right. What we are hearing so far are off topic, but it's up to the chair how she wants to redirect the discussion. We were meant to be talking about how to unite the nations of Africa, and if there are problems, clearly the current governments are not solving them, which is why we are saying that if we had a continental government in place, maybe they can begin to solve continental problems. But so far, all I've heard are our problems. We know these problems already. Why are we still rehearsing the same problems? Why? Why don't we rather go on to the solution? So, Chair.
Brother Kwame.
Yeah, so Chair, just to say that, so Chair, just to say that what Brother Pigeon has identified is actually right. But it's up to you how you redirect the discussion, Sister Ida. Thank you.
Well, Brother Kwame, we're meant to be talking about the diaspora. If people feel that this is all part of the diaspora, I'm prepared to let them talk.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Brother Pigeon, please feel, if you feel you want to redirect it as a diaspora, please.
No, I want to say the following.
Go ahead, as a United Nations diaspora.
Yeah, I'm in the roadside and I'm still 1 hour away from home. So let me speak what I want to say now. And what I want to say is that, can I proceed, Chair?
Yes, please do.
Now, I want to say on the topic of United Nations of Africa, we are aware that the diasporans leaving Africa to the outside the continent is something we can trace. Of course, evidence also shows that we were outside there before even any other generations were there. The Moors left Africa before even the whites, whatever, found themselves there. The majority of the diaspora we are speaking today are products of enslavement and that slave period. And it's not only the diaspora Africans who went to the West. There's also Africans who are affected by urbanization who also went to the East. And the traces of blacks also in the East is very available. And therefore, when you're speaking of the diaspora in this context, we are speaking of either the diasporas who went during the Moors period. We are speaking of the diasporas who went to the West during slave period. We are speaking of diasporas who went outside the Africa during urbanization. And you are speaking of the current diasporas who have gone out of Africa, maybe because of job opportunity and the rest. And therefore, my basis of argument is that before they left, even when urbanization as the oldest thing was here, there were tribes. The Bantus existed, the Luos existed, the Eves existed, the Yoruba existed. And even when they were taken out of Africa at the time even of enslavement of urbanization, they were picked as Yorubas, as Eves, as Bantus, as either Shonas and Gunis. And therefore, they are coming back in the framework of United Nations Africa, is coming back to what they left. And therefore, I support and propose the unification of Africa on the basis of what Africans were, especially Africa in diaspora, before they left the continent. They were nations, they were Eves, they were Luos, they were never Ghanaians, they were never Nigerians, they were never Kenyans. And therefore, to my point of this discussion is that I therefore endorse and propose that they can trace their roots, which can be optional. Whether they want to do a DNA test to trace their roots, whether they were really Eves or Yoruba, for them to come back to the Yoruba community or the Yoruba nation in the unification of Africa, or whether they want to come without testing their DNA and choose any nation they want to belong to. Somebody can be either Shona and decide to follow the practices and the customs of the Shona community and the Shona nation, and therefore he become a Shona. Somebody can come back and maybe do a DNA and find himself he was a Ewe and decide to be a Ewe because of the DNA traces of their ancestors. In whatever format they choose, the United Nations of Africa offer them an alternative solution that then recognize who they were before they left the continent. And therefore, I think and propose that the United Nations of Africa is a better option to consider and take into consideration and assimilate our African diasporas rather than the United States of Africa. Because when they left, the states never existed. And when they want them to come back to take a citizenship in terms of an identification card to show that they are citizens of a state, which is a colonial state that requires them to have a document to show that. I don't think that is right for them, because there's no nation that requires somebody to carry a document in terms of ID. I'm a Luo. I don't need any ID to call myself a Luo. I don't need a passport or national identification card to call myself a Luo. You call yourself a Yoruba. Do you have a national passport and an ID or a citizenship, something that makes you a Yoruba? Therefore, Africans do not need to come back in the continent with the process of recognizing a citizenship of a document to belong to a new colonial state. They need to come back to Africa, to their nations that do not require anything in terms of any state, but only require their ancestral origin that they were part of it. So that's what I wanted to propose to this conversation, that is the direction I'm thinking that the unification of Africa can take. And I want to assure you that the United Nations of Africa accommodate diaspora Africans in the best format they left the continent, in whatever means or in whatever ways they left the continent. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Brother Pigeon. So you're saying that we're to go by European standards of DNA and who's what's where, is what you're really saying.
No, he's saying, Sister Ida, he's saying that we must give them the choice. Give them the choice.
And his choice,
That's what he's saying. And he's also saying that when we talk about diasporan Africans, it goes back way back. We were in all these places that we refer to as diaspora. There are black people there are Chinese people who are black. There are Japanese people who are black.
Who come from Africa. I don't dispute that. Oh, has someone muted you? Sorry, it wasn't me. I don't know who did that.
It was me accidentally.
Ms. Ida, can I clarify what I said before I get into the bus?
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Ms. Ida, I said that.
Okay, brothers. We have hands up, so I'm going to go.
No, can I clarify?
Again? You said.
If I stop, I will not speak again until maybe to next session.
Okay, please clarify.
Now, I'm saying that the African diaspora have two options. One, they can choose any nation they belong to, because at the end of the day, we are all Africans. Even before the tribes and the nation came in, we must have come from the same root. So they can either choose any nation in Africa, and for you to be of any nationality, you just accept the customs and the practices of those nationalities. In the olden days, each nationality had a way of circumcision or practices or anything else. Any African diaspora can choose any nation they fit in, and then they go through that process of customary process or cultural process of that society, and they become members of that nationality. Or they can decide to trace back their root in DNA to go back to specific nationalities their ancestors were in. So in whatever format they choose, they will not be separated because they are Kenyans, they're Ugandans, or they're Tanzanians, because those ones never existed. Those are territories that we imposed on us even when they left. Because when these territories came, they were no longer here. They left. So they need to choose any option, whether they want to go DNA test or whether they want to pick any nation, because you are one family. That's what I wanted to say.
David. No, you have not. Yeah. Sorry. Okay, so thank you, Brother Pigeon. It was clearer what you were saying the second time. Pro Book 640, could you please tell us your name and also welcome to talk, whatever you have to say. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Oluwatosi Adeyemi. I think I've yet few people mentioning AU, Africa Union here. I just want to say that actually I don't like hearing that organization, because they are the same people that have been ruling Africans with iron hand. They consist of leaders, presidents of Africa that that have been misgoverning and misruling their people. So that organization to me is useless. The only solution for us to come together as African is the people themselves. I'm part of an organization that will be championing revolution in Nigeria. So some revolution moves have been taking place in some African countries, from Kenya to Mauritius to Morocco. So how can we come together to streamline and simplify this revolution and take these monsters out of power that has been ruling us with iron hand? what an example is the one that happened in Cameroon recently and Tanzania. So the only solution is the evolution of people under a socialist platform. So how can we mobilize people of African continent to make sure that these people are, because they are the purveyors of neocolonialism. So, and my questions go to Brother Baleka that make an analogy of a girl that was trafficked from one country to another. So I actually want to ask that if a girl was trafficked from a region and that region is in crisis, for example, maybe like northern Nigeria, which is in crisis, or maybe like Sudan where it's going and it's in crisis, you say that and the only place that you find is this thing that she can be safe is in South Africa. This is that because maybe because she's not from South Africa, then she is not welcome. She should be taken to a region which is undergoing crisis. Because I know that even North African countries whereby they always grant asylum to people that are facing crisis in some regions. So we say that, okay, because of that, she should be taken to where a country or maybe a region which is undergoing crisis. So that is where I want to be clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Brother Sipaway, you're next, and then Brother Glenroy. But please, the two of you, can you make it as quick as possible? Because there are other people who haven't spoken, and we've got like 20 minutes left. And I'm sure that Brother Kwame is going to want to come in. But Brother Sipaway, your turn.
Before brother Sipaway comes in, can I, Chair? This is a platform for dialectical disagreements and fireworks. So it's fine if the brothers want to trash it out here. That's fine. That is what this space is for. We don't allow it on WhatsApp, but here there's a space for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Kwame. But the fact of the matter is our time is running out. And with luck, we will maybe have this discussion again in 2 weeks' time. So I'm sure you would also like to have something to say. So I'm asking them to be brief. Thank you.
Okay, I will do my best to be brief. My direct answer to the brother who asked me the question, for example, should the visa that's trafficked be taken somewhere else? Look, whether that girl is taken to South Africa, Qatar, Finland, wherever, the fact of the matter is there will always be a yearning to return back to where she came from at the first opportunity. Okay, that's the fact. So if it's a dangerous situation, expediency may be, okay, we're putting you here while it's safe, but we know that the end goal is for you to be able to return home as soon as you can. Now, the reason why I had to quickly interrupt Glenroy is because as the author of my own presentation, I am best suited to identify where errors are being made. And I didn't see the point in spending 5 more minutes making a false argument. I agree with my brother Pigeon. He said it exactly. And this is what I've been saying. Before the Berlin Conference, we weren't any of those nations as we know them. We were peoples. And the DNA test is how we get behind, those of us in the diaspora, that's how we get behind the Berlin Conference. So we're not talking about those Berlin Conference states. We are talking about, I already made the case about and Glenroy didn't address this, our duty to the ancestor that was trafficked. Now, just because I'm reminding us of that duty doesn't mean that I am advocating that we restrict repatriation only to those who take a DNA test, right? And you can only go to that country. Not at all. In today's current reality, the fact of the matter is they don't see us as just Africans, which is why only one country has a law that recognizes our right to return, which is Benin. From a legal standpoint, those who want citizenship today, the strongest way to get it is to take the African ancestry DNA test. So let's disabuse ourselves of this idea that the DNA test is European. First of all, no science belongs to one race or group of people, okay? Science belongs to all of humanity, including our own African scientists. And the African ancestry DNA test is the only test that measures non-recombinant DNA. It's our own scientists and our own company. So in conclusion, what I'm saying is you should not attack or take away from those of us who are reminding us of the first people that are harmed and how to give justice to them by recognizing the miracle of the African ancestry DNA test, which allows us to fully recover from ethnocide and to use it as the strongest current legal argument, which is proven to be able to get citizenship in at least a handful of countries. Why would you want to detract from the group that is doing that? You might not agree with it, or it might not be what you want, but you don't have to detract from it. It is not if you stand on your lineage that you can't be Pan-African. No, as Brother Pigeon, I'm sure would agree with me, Pan-African means that Balanta, Bamileke, Bisa, right? We all recognize our lineage and we all have a camaraderie and a common destiny. So you don't sacrifice your lineage, right? Your ethnic knowledge that gives you your place in the world. You don't sacrifice that just to be Pan-African. You uphold both of them simultaneously. And I think this is the practical suggestion that Brother Pigeon was made. Finally, this is why we have to have a seat at the table, because I don't talk about the Arab slave trade because I wasn't affected by that. I advocate for the things that are of interest to my community, but I'm not against those who are also talking about the Arab slave trade and those that were taken to the East. So in order for the interests of the Afro descendants that were taken to the West, in order for them to be properly represented and prioritized, we can't rely on people who didn't suffer that heritage to do it. That's a fact. So this is why we need a table, and all Africans come to the table with their interests. There's nothing wrong with Afro descendants who are a subset of the 6th region, the diaspora, who are the only ones that suffered this chattel enslavement and ethnocide, right, to champion that issue because it affects them. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you very much indeed. Brother Glenroy, we have 16 minutes left.
Comrade,
So,
I will not take the amount of time our brother took, because perhaps for him being quick means something else. I will be I will be very quick. I could have
Brother
finished
Glenroy, I'd also like you to wrap up. Oh, fine. I need to get you and Brother Coco to wrap up what you have to say for the meeting this time. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I can do that. And as I said, could have been finished by now. Sipaway, please write this down, because I think you keep missing the point that I am making. Africans who were stolen, and indeed Africans who have later migrated to the West, intermarriage with other parts of our nation. So going back to Africa as an African mean you take the lineage of all of those who have affected your life or been part of that. And this is what, if I would have bothered with a DNA test, would have shown me. And I mentioned the thing about Idris. And if you find that video, you can understand it and why the DNA is not a means to identify one lineage. People might be romantically enough to say, oh, I'm descendant from a Zulu, so great, I'll take that. What I'm saying is, because of our history and what has happened to us before enslavement, please, it's not about just enslavement. Our people moved along the continent, our people travel, our people intermarriage. So really, no one has an Akan pure image, no one has a Zulu pure descendants. We are a mixture of all African people, okay? So you may prefer DNA, great. I'm not against that. Please don't misunderstand me. What Pigeon said is exactly the point. If you wish to return to a part of the continent, engage in the cultural nuances of that region, then why not? You don't have to say, I have to have a DNA, come with a piece of paper and said, I'm entitled to this, I'm entitled to that. This is my position. And I don't pretend this is the position of every African. Okay? And I'm not saying it's a sole Pan-Africanist position. So please understand that. The reality is there are two different views on this about our right to return. I reject completely, from my personal point of view, any idea that I should be DNA. And please don't understand this. There are groups of people in this country who, in this world, who dominate certain aspects. And I suspect the European, if we are honest about it, dominate certain things. And I do not wish in any way to give them any information about myself, share. Well, you can raise your hand, but they dominate certain aspects. If I was to say they dominate social media, you wouldn't blink an eye. But what it is, for your purpose of your position, it's not true that they dominate the DNA process. And I'm not even going to mention the African DNA system. I'm sorry, I'll leave that there. Chair, to wrap up, it is, or my last point on this is that I listed a number of things that I think it's very important that we address and have these kind of discussion. I don't know how many people are put off by the exchange between myself and Sipaway. We have these exchanges and we do put our view along strongly. By no means I hope anyone is offended at all. But
Thank you,
issue,
Brother.
and by the way, just a slight disagreement with Sipaway, just because you believe the Arab enslavement did not affect you, I'm sorry, it affects all of us. Depopulation of our community, depopulation of our nation affects all of us. So everything that they've done affects us. So, but the points that I've put forward about repatriation, identity, can't remember all of them, but certainly one that I felt was very important to put today is the issue of the roles that others have played in our enslavement. So those things I think are necessary discussion that will help the issue of merger of the diaspora. And obviously, Sipaway touched on the 6th region. I very much support that. He's aware of that. Others are, that we must have a process by which we, or those people, I'm no longer there, those people in the 6th region can be part of this ongoing process. I support that fully, but I don't trust the African Union in delivering. So I say Africans outside of the continent must be driving that and be the leader of that process. So I'll leave it there, Chair. I'm sorry if it's longer than I would have called short. Thank you.
Brother Glenroy, thank you. Brother Coco, would you like to say anything for the last few minutes on any of the things you've heard or anything you'd like to add? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The most important observation to make is that we, most of the time, focus a lot on where we disagree. We need to start moving towards the commonalities, the stuff we agree on, and then move from there. The two bases or the two viewpoints which have been advocated today by Brother Glenroy and Brother Sipiwe, it's about nuance. They are saying the same thing, which is what Brother Benny said. Let me stop there. In concluding, I would like to say that what we are talking about can only be a pipe dream if we continue with the current model of the European constructs of countries. It won't work. Someone said, disband the AU. Don't even talk about the AU. But the fact is, we need a strong center. We need an organ at the center that drives union of our peoples. Yes, there's something wrong with the AU as it stands, but we need to start working towards a strong core to bring together different perspectives and to bring the African Union together, the unity of the African people. I am one of those who advocates a lot for the nations, for the ethnicities. We need to go back to how things were. That's why I said in my opening, the Europeans came in, invaded Africa, and took power from the chiefs, took power from the nations of Africa, and formed the states. We need to reject that. We need to wake up. And we cannot start talking about the diaspora until we sort our house, put our house in order. But in the meantime, we need to recognize what our brothers and sisters in the diaspora went through and make allowances for them to come back. They have to come back. And we cannot be selling citizenships for those people who can afford them in Botswana, selling them in South Africa, selling them in Sierra Leone, when our own brothers and sisters are stuck in the diaspora, where they cannot afford to buy those citizenships. Why should they buy back their citizenships when they were denied or when their ancestors were forcibly taken into captivity from those lands, from our ancestral lands? I think that is the issue that has to be resolved. With regards to the union will happen, but we need to deal with certain issues within Africa, including the core, because right now we are still under occupation using the Europe trained, Europe financed, Europe sponsored mercenaries. I yield.
Thank you very much, Brother Coco. I would give Brother Kwame the chance, but we've only got 7 minutes, and I feel that that's not enough time for him. So can I suggest we were going to have a second meeting, not next week, but the week after, because the presentations today were asked for all within this week. And everybody said they haven't had to talk about what they would like to present. So this is like a taster. Anybody else who would like to present in 2 weeks' time, or who hasn't had the opportunity to say anything today, please store it up for not next week, but the week after. Is that all right, Brother Kwame? I know you have, I can give you 6 minutes, in fact, to close it for us.
That's fine.
Thank
Yes. Thank you, Chair. So, yes,
Do
that's
you-
fine. Chair, can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Oh, and
So-
one last thing. I can hear you. I can hear you. If you'd like to speak in 2 weeks' time, please get in touch with Brother Pigeon so he could.
I speak every week, so it's okay. But no, but thank you. So so Chair, yeah, it's fine if we want to continue the discussion on the Uniting Africa with respect to the diaspora. If we want to continue that discussion next in 2 weeks' time, and 2 weeks' time, the date will be there. I'm just checking. That will be the 6th of December. That is fine. On the 29th, which is next week, Saturday, we shall, however, continue the unification discussion. But yes, with respect to diaspora, the week after that. So if brothers and sisters here want to continue with the discussion, not necessarily on the diaspora. Next week Saturday, and that is fine. I don't know if you all know, but Sister Ida, who is chairing today, is the one who inspired these Saturday sessions. Although she doesn't like me, doesn't like me to say that. when I do, she gets upset with me. But it's Sister Ida who inspired the Saturday sessions, and I feel that we started off from different directions, but I don't know if you all feel that we are now really talking about what we should be talking about on unification of Africa and the issues around unification. I feel we are now touching the pulse, because when you hear the fiery exchange between Brother Sipiwe and Brother Glenroy, which we need, by the way, let's not think that when we meet in the public square, we don't fight in terms of verbal gymnastics. We do that all the time. I have seen, look, I've been in public squares where elders have stood up and poured a drink and screamed and but we're not fighting. It's just the way as Africans sometimes we talk and discuss and so on. So we are not bothered. It's not a problem if brothers and sisters here want to disagree vociferously. But at the end of the day, as you know, with the African way, we all live in unanimity. Whatever our disagreements, we live in a kind of with a unanimous view as to, yes, I disagree with this, I disagree with that, but at the end of the day, this is how we ought to move forward. So so that is fine. And we've heard a lot. I've made notes, and we need a whole day to go through some of the notes I've made. so that's fine. I think I would echo Brother Benny when he said that both Brother Sipiwe and Brother Glenroy have said the same thing in different ways, in the sense that I am not an African. if you see what I mean, I am an Ewe. the word African, I don't even recognize it. It's not part of our etymology. We don't recognize it where I come from. We are not Africans. The land is not even Africa. We call it in my language, we call it the land of black people. The word African is a colonial imposed Greco-Roman term, which we don't accept. Even the word Ethiopia is Greek. So Abyssinians, the current Orobo people will not even accept that to some extent. But those are all discussions we can have, right? But I think that is what Brother Sipiwe is trying to draw attention to. At the same time, what Brother Glenroy is drawing attention to is the fact that if you are outside the continent, like our children who are outside the continent, who have now been to the continent, over time, they lose the consciousness of being Africans or from where they came from. Therefore, for them, just as Europeans see Africa as one country, and we all know that, don't we? We all know that when you speak to the ordinary European or the ordinary English person or German, they say Africa, they think it's one country. You see? So in that sense, when you return to Africa, it doesn't matter where you return to, you just return to Africa. So what Brother Glenroy is drawing our attention to is that reality as well. You see, so that's why I think Brother Benny was saying that they are both saying the same thing. I don't know if you all know, but me currently, when I go to Ghana, I am not seen as a Ghanaian. Yeah, they don't see me as they see me as a foreigner, as Obroni, as they say. Strange, but that's how they see us. So even though we are black, they don't see us as black people. Not because our skins are not black, but because culturally they see us as different. That we don't even speak. Some of our people don't even speak the language, as you know, and they can't express themselves in the indigenous language. If you ask them to express themselves, they can't. They can only say it in English or German. So anyway, all I'm saying, brothers and sisters, Brother Chair, I'm just saying that
I need to tell everyone what a Brony is.
A lot of Brony is a white person.
I need to tell everybody what a Brony is.
Yeah, Chair, I'm going to hand over back to you in a moment. I was just saying that a lot of issues have been raised. We will continue this discussion next week. What I would have hoped to hear, as the one writing the paper for us to sign and release in the public domain, what I would have liked to hear more was how our African brothers and sisters who are in their millions, Brazil, Argentina, all of, how are we going to incorporate them into the United Nations of Africa? That's what I would like. I would have loved to hear more of. This idea that they are all just a sixth region, I think it's not a good idea. It's just lumps together Germans, English, Argentinians, Brazilians. Because remember, these people have lived in these countries for a long time and they have imbibed some of their cultures, you see. So I'll pause there. Chair, we will continue the discussion next week. Thank you. Yeah. I can make any announcements.
Continues. I thank you all for having come to okay, that's fine. But I thank everybody who's attended, and I hope that it might inspire others to also want to speak the next time. So thank you all. Do you have an answer?
Yeah, yes, Chair. Yes, Chair. The announcements. Yes, the announcements are that we shall continue our Thursday philosophical and ideological discussion on Thursday as normal, GMT Ghana time from 6 to 8, and then on Saturday, same time today, like today, we shall continue the unification meetings on Saturday, like today. So we look forward to welcoming everyone. Thank you very much. That's the announcement. And if I might remind everyone here, I know people have said the table. We are the table. This is a table as well, where we're all sitting around the table here. So there's no table somewhere else. This is the table. so thank you very much. Chair, that is it. I'm going to stop the recording and I'll play some music. People can leave whenever they like, Chair, if that's okay. Thank you.